designer and an artist, and I've had my training, formal education at NIFT in fashion, lifestyle, and accessories design. But over time, I've also been producing some art. So the material that I have been working for the longest of time has been brass, and I just call this, it's more of a sort of, you know, I've taken it from a perspective of material, and then I'll go into further details on, you know, my inspirations, etc. So by default, from my graduation project, I have been working with metal crafts. So, you know, it's been a by default sort of choice, not really a choice of material, but over time I have sort of, you know, loved to sort of like work with it more and more. I started with my own sort of brand, Cobalt Designs, in 2012, and we've been working with a lot of metal alloys, and you know, I mean, the reasons why I sort of stick to what people kind of do pick on is, you know, the properties of metal to begin with, its versatility, you know, in terms of, you know, what you can do with it, machined or, you know, hand done, the kind of processes that work with it. I find it, you know, aging with grace. It's a material that really ages with grace, and it has a sort of permanence to it. Over time, over the presentation and the material that I sort of work in the end is something that is completely different from that. Some of the products that I've worked with and the inspiration, so this is a light, it's called Exile Thorn Apple Pendant Light, and this was inspired by essentially exile, and you know, sort of, it was something that I had produced for a light art exhibition where we were looking at the traditional form of exile and homecoming from a Diwali point of view, and how Ram was, you know, banished, and also taking it further from the point of view of exile for loads of other communities, and how though it is, you know, when you go in a farm in India and you have all these acacia fencing around fields, it's a way of keeping away cattle from coming in, grazing in, and that's the sort of symbol I took from this. And though it is something that is painful, but it also makes you resilient, as you know, Anita's really well said, and that's what this was inspired from. A lot of my work is very inspired from nature, and this was the xylem pendant light that came out of it, looking at cross sections under a microscope of stems and vascular systems of plants. And this is again looking at the kind of reflective property of metal, sort of exploring that. And it was all done in repoussé and chasing process. This is a playful sort of take on the 1930s slotted angles that we found in all the warehouses. One of my sort of best playground is the workshop, where, you know, you look at loads of objects which are everyday objects and then reimagine them. So this was a sort of playful take on that, where the slots and, you know, the slots were essentially replaced by crosses and knots. And this are coffee tables which are inspired by Islamic and Christian sort of architecture, and looking at arches, and that's what it was essentially. And, you know, one of the portals for me, mihrab, is, yeah, I mean, it's where it's directed towards where Medina is, but for me it's more like a portal that sort of takes you on, so that journey. So that's what I was inspired from this. These are all chemically treated with verdigris on brass. This was a Frank Lloyd Wright chair, which, yeah.
We can't see you because you're right in front of your composition. Thank you.
Better?
Yeah.
So This was a chair that was inspired by Flying Croydwright's chair, and then I've sort of further modified and added on to it. It's something really classical and interesting and sort of structural, but I sort of wanted to give it my own flavor. Another fun sort of product that we came up with was jerry cans, which during the wartime were used for transporting oil. Again, was in metal. Nowadays you find Ganga Jal found in plastic jerry cans, something very often transported around. And in the workshop you have these large plastic containers that are sliced to store water. Taking that and sort of looking at it from another point of view, where also copper has its therapeutic properties, and so taking that and sort of marrying these ideas together. That's where this jerry can came together. Another fun, the classical form of parrots, and looking at their sort of behavior and how they sort of naughtily peck into ripe fruit. And that's how these mirrors came together, where sort of enlarged the sizes of the fruit. Again, this is very inspired from Newari faucets that you find in Darbar halls, and this is a sort of water feature that was had those aesthetics, but this was using sand casting as a process instead of lost wax, which is very often used by Nepali craftsmen. This was looking at pie charts, and again, Diwali being like the financial year ending, and here the things that we are weighing is progress, wisdom, prosperity, and health. So that's what these pies sort of stand for. So we've mixed in copper and brass and various different textures within that. This is again using sand casting methods. We've used aluminum in this, and then it has a resin coat on top of it, these bowls. Using the process of etching, and this is actually a funny sort of thing that clients sometimes come in and you get peeved off, is that when they pick up your graduation project and ask them to marry it with a Castiglione light sort of arm and a Tom Dixon sort of Archimedean solid. So this is what sort of comes out from the marriage of all of these. In terms of art, I have had a sort of different subject matter related a bit, where I was looking at urbanization and habitat destruction, and there were a couple of shows, and this was from the solo show that I did in Bombay, and it was looking at the city as the city forest and how buildings coming up in metropolises, and the roadways almost being like these termite tubes, and sort of drawing out all the resources. So what looks really beautiful from an aerial view is actually hollowing itself completely. From a child's point of view of how we pressed flowers, looking at concrete herbariums where it's a child sort of saying things and making a diary entry, like Daddy said we're moving to a new building and it's on the main road opposite a mall, or today we learned to make pop-up buildings and they just look like what I see outside my window. So sort of critique from a child's point of view about the kind of environment that you're giving them. Looking at the process of hybridization and in nature as a progressive one, and contrasting it to how cities develop in terms of hybrid cities, and questioning that really, whether that's been done in a very sustainable way. Then looking at this particular plant is, you find it in Southeast Asia, it's called the jade vine. It's got a very sort of ant-like menacing look, which I've exaggerated in this, and almost saying that if you tamper with nature, then it will take over. And actually, nature is the true gold that you should be after. This was again looking at the same subject further. So these were hand engraved red listed plants on bell jars. Here I was looking at the idea of museums, especially in India, very often uncared for, and contrasting that with conservation. So looking at certain red listed plants on the brink of extinction, and property which now we call as the gold really being fool's gold. Something that builders sell you aspirations. They have these really strange names all over, like Aranya Greens and Sea View, and some of them actually boasting Mall View. There's one in Gurgaon somewhere. And the sun sort of rising between these concrete blocks. This was a recent commissioned project that was there, Hyatt Aerocity. It was on this concept of edible flowers, and it was looking at various flowers in India, like the banana, the floral part of it. So it's really larger than life version of it in brass and then painted with airbrush, PU paints. The Fetchnar, nasturtium. And this was a workshop, two workshops I did, which was facilitated by the World Bank and the Asian Heritage Foundation in Madhubani, Bihar, with craftswomen that are working with grass, which actually was an amazing departure from the material that I've been working for so long, where strangely enough, certain connotations of it and the clients that you can pitch it to is sort of very, a sort of disjunct or disconnect from my own personal sort of being. So this was a really humbler material to actually, and I really enjoyed working with these craftswomen. So we developed some lights, sort of using a multiplicity kind of thing, aesthetic. Then this is inspired by sort of temples, terracotta temples, sort of almost dissolving, looking at brickwork, exposed brickwork within it. This is a fun sort of product, which is a lighting that's a merry-go-round. You can actually push it around and all these figures of animals move. All hand-woven and dyed in grass. Some costume jewelry. There's the second workshop, we developed a lot of costume jewelry because we thought that that's it's easier to do. The people in India especially will not pay that much for basketry rather than something that was that small but at the same time has far more sort of perceived value. So we played around with typography, and they could really easily connect to jewelry because they wore it and they could understand the scale and the use and function of it, which was brilliant. This sort of looked at Madhubani painting, which is quite famous, and looked at that figures, and we married some certain other embellishments on them with tassels, etc. So like jigsaw puzzles. And that's the last slide.
We are bang on as far as time is concerned.
The fun.
5 minutes left.
Sorry, it was a bit of a speedy.
I am off on the time.